If I gave a fuck what y'all think I would be doing this? Welcome to the FMFU podcast, the podcast that's from me, for us. Vulgar but true, real and never fake. I'm your host, Reese, and I've got a lot of shit on my mind today, so let's get into it. I was thinking the other day, and, it's funny growing up at times. Like, I feel like everybody that I grew up with around had like some type of like nickname. Like, I think everybody who I'm close to has some type of nickname that they're still called to this day. People except maybe like close family members, like really honestly hardly ever call me by my real name. I mean, my nickname, I guess you could say, is shortened, and that's easy to say. Then of course my government, even though it comes from that, but it's not nothing like that's really crazy or like off the wall. Like, you ever had like these people you ever grew up with who be having like these crazy off the wall nicknames, and you just never know like really where that came from, but also what is your real name to begin with? Like, where the fuck did you get the name Tonka? Who the fuck started calling you that? What is your real name, nigga? But anyways, happy Friday, people, and welcome to an all-new exciting episode of the From Me For Us podcast. And man, it's been a while, so I do want to say I just hope all the dads out there had a great Father's Day. I think it's understood by the masses that Father's Day, unfortunately, just isn't as big of a deal to society as Mother's Day, and that's okay because, we shouldn't really compare mom versus dads. We don't want to start that war, but hopefully, even with the lesser appreciation from society, you were able to spend some time with your loved ones, receive a cool pair of socks, a hat, a shirt, or something that, your family will let you know that, they truly appreciate you. I got a cool wall painting and, my picture in the back. So, real appreciative of my gift. But outside of that and the other things, I've been just very busy. So, it just really seems like it's just been a while, since I've been able to really just sit my ass down and record some shit. It seems like ever since I went out of town for my man's wedding a couple weeks ago, I just feel like I've been going on 10 ever since I got back, for real. I signed Mason up for football when I was out of town, not knowing when acclimation practice was going to start. And long and behold, as soon as I get back from OT, practice will start the same fucking week. Mind you, I didn't get notified until like the day of the first practice. Like, I'm on the damn grill fucking cooking shit, and I'm reading this message like, well, shit, I guess he ain't going today. So, of course, the next day, I'm running around having to buy a helmet, gear, whatever other stuff he needs on like my one afternoon of freedom. Because on top of that, the freedom is really diminished because now my job is on some quote unquote be in the office more than you're not bullshit. So now I got to juggle getting my ass into the office at least 3 times a week. I've been spoiled way too long. So, of course, I'll be honest, when I got the news, I was being a brat about it. But I have a lot of feelings, good and bad, of why. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And we'll just, do what we got to do, right? But yeah, all over the place, running around, not really knowing how to sit the fuck down. Depending on when you're listening to this pod, ironic enough, I might already be going again. Possibly if you're listening on a Saturday, I'll be driving to Miami because I have to catch a boat for a cruise on Sunday. So should be fun. Probably a lot going on, but we'll see. But anyways, it's been a minute, and since we haven't really had a pod in the month of June, let's go ahead and recap some shit, starting with the NBA Finals. So the NBA Finals is officially over after a grueling 7-game series with the Oklahoma City Thunder ending up on top over the Indiana Pacers. The big topic will be, where does the Thunder rank in history overall? How Shea is the first to get, an MVP, Finals MVP. He had the scoring title. The team had the best record in the league. He got a Western Conference Finals MVP, which wasn't a thing until a few years ago, but he pretty much cleaned house and got everything. But on top of that, the team being so young, the question that's going to come up is, how many more chips can they run up? Of course, on the other side of the coin is going to be the Halliburton-Achilles combo. I really honestly hate that injury happened, man. I really do, because not only do you not want to see someone get hurt, but it happened on the biggest stage, and honestly, he was on a heater real quick. It seems like when he tore his Achilles after hitting a few threes, it's very reminiscent of when KD came in when the Raptors were up 3-1, and he came in on a heater and then tore his shit. It's very, very strange, but it really sucks because you just never know what could happen. So I kind of hate it. And ultimately, you don't want to see anybody get hurt. So you hate it for that as well. Also, I hate because, online is always going to have the what if discourse. And I really hate that shit because everybody always talks about what ifs unless it's their team winning or playing or the team that lost, they don't really give much a fuck about, right? So I'm not really a fan of that. And honestly, if there are any true Pacer fans that are listening, I really feel for you. That shit sucks to lose your shot due to injuries. Trust me, 10 years ago, I dealt with the same shit when Kyrie blew his fucking knee out. But at the end of the day, being objective and looking at things in hindsight, I truly honestly believe that the series would have still went the same way it went, even if he didn't get hurt. I think the Pacers, for them to have a chance, to win that series, they would have had to need to win it in six. Especially after the way they won game one on OKC's floor. But when they lost game five and were down 2-3, I just didn't see them winning two games in a row, even if Halliburton never got injured. It was on fire. Like I said, it was crazy. Similar to like when KD came in when he was a member of the Warriors and they were down 3-1 against the Raptors and then he got hurt. So, it's always easy to say, oh, just drop them in, guaranteed that they're going to win. But the ball doesn't always drop that same way. A lot of, what kept the Pacers in the series to me was a lot of the Thunder kind of playing with their food at times. I think game one was a prime example of that and how like they had created 19 turnovers, not even just in the game and a half, but at the half they were only up like I think maybe 10. I mean, even in game six, which was probably, their worst game of the playoffs or maybe the year, sometimes you're looking at it, it's like one of them situations where it's just like, what the fuck are y'all doing? You know? I mean, you definitely would be saying that if it's a team you truly rooted for or if you had money on. Good thing for me is that, I didn't have a dog in the fight for either, so I didn't really care either way. But they're the champs. The Pacers had an opportunity to cap off a historic fucking run, knocked my team out, my man's teams out, my other man's teams out, and had a chance to cap it off, but just couldn't get it done, due in part to a major injury, but also just couldn't close it out in 5 or 6 like they probably needed to. It's crazy to me though, just thinking about this injury, about how many people are blowing their Achilles, or tearing their Achilles, I should say, this year. Dame, Jason Tatum, Halliburton. I think Kyrie's injury this year was an Achilles, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. I hope it wasn't, but it's kind of wild. So, some people are saying the shoes, which could be the case. They're saying too much AAU and too much wear and tear and herky jerk on their bodies, pause. I don't know. Maybe there'll be some type of research to determine if that is something that's true or not, if it is the low cuts or whatever the case is. But it doesn't seem like that this was happening a lot back in the day before. Who knows? The internet's going crazy saying that the number 0 is cursed now because between Dame, Jason Tatum, and Tyrese Halliburton, that's all the number they wear. And they all blew their shit out this season. Crazy as fuck. But hopefully, all of them can recover in around the, 12 to 18 months it takes and can come back stronger than ever. So that's the cap of the NBA season. I'm looking forward to next year. The East is wide open. I kind of X'd out my niggas a few episodes. So now it's time for a reset and, it's going to be the same thing. Make something happen or you just not going to be my niggas no more. So the East is still pretty open with all these injuries. The West is going to be wild, wild, as it always is. And, with this being the 7th champ in 7 years, it's been so much parity that I wouldn't be shocked if there was a new champ next year either. And, especially with KD being traded to the Rockets. And I mean, even if the Rockets don't win it all, they definitely could ruin a team's playoff aspirations in, en route to the team trying to get to a championship. So we'll see what happens when the ball gets back rolling in October, man. But in the meantime, no more basketball, which for Reese means no more sports that I thoroughly give a fuck about, right? So now it's time to just enjoy the summer, catch up on some of these shows that I need to binge that I've been behind on, and get ready for some football in about 2.5 months. So let's make it happen, man. And it's been heat waves like a motherfucker out here. So I just want to say summer is officially here and showing its ass. Make sure y'all stay cool because this shit out here has been bad. I think as a black man, we have this mental upon us because, we're always kind of like stuck in survival mode. Like no matter what the opportunity is or how much we gain, I saw this post, and to paraphrase, it basically said how us as men, like we're always looking for like the next thing. Like even after we've like accomplished goals that we set for ourselves, we never really just sit back and take in all the things that we've accomplished. And, I put it in a group chat, and it's something that did, resonate with all of my friends, honestly. But we did have good conversation to say, like, hey, we all kind of done made it and did some great things, and we really, are them if you really sit back and think about it. But I think just, because of the times and also sometimes just your comparison of things you see, you sometimes might feel like you're a little bit behind. uh, it can be tough at times to just sit back, even if you're not comparing and trying to look at what you have compared to someone else and thinking you're behind as well. Because I think even just when trying to do things the normal, old fashioned good way of, hey, I'm going to get a good job and work and just be a good worker and retire, that shit's just starting not to look like really the thing that's possible anymore. It's like life is starting to like outweigh pay. Um, I saw this meme that I had just reposted the other day, and it was saying how in 2019, I think the average median salary to get a home was like $67,000. But now the median average salary in America to get a home in 2025 is $114,000. I mean, that's in 6 years. So this is why a lot of times when I say, we look at things about, oh, it used to not be like this, or oh, before at this place it was like this. Yeah, we're comparing things from 2019 to now. We have to have a different look at things in a total lens. I call it PC pre-COVID and AC after COVID. They're legit two different lives now. Whether that's hybrid remote things, or even them trying to roll back some of that, or even just the way the cost of living is now, it's just not the same. So again, it just goes on to that point where even if you're just trying to do it the good old way, where you got a good job, you're making good money, you're being able to afford and pay for everything, man, life is just starting to outweigh the pay. Like it's just really starting to get to a point where everything is becoming unaffordable. And no matter what you try to do to catch up or stay ahead, it's always something that one way or another is going to set your ass back. Um, but with all that being said, I think people sometimes fail to realize that, and of course, it's going to sound very biased here, but I think that responsible black men carry the heaviest weight because we feel that we have to be the providers, the protectors, and all of the above. And we value that to the highest degree. So, because of this, 9 times out of 10, all you're thinking about is how to survive. Or if you do accomplish something, you instantly think, like, well, what is next? I think this gets like overlooked at times because there's so much stigma with a lot of like women nowadays. There's this entitlement that a man should or has to be doing something. And because of this, there's not enough empathy for the men who are actually out here doing exactly what they're supposed to do. It's not more like a good job, it's more like a yeah, nigga, you better. And that's never good. I say this as someone who doesn't come from like a rich family and has, come from a decent household in a decent place though. We weren't like eating fucking bullshit or nothing. I'm not about to lie there. But I've, seen some up and downs in life growing up. And even as I got older, there were some things that occurred. So I've seen some bad shit and worked my way from decent places and beyond. And, it didn't matter if there was like all my bills was paid, could halfway barely afford the bills, the credit card was high, it was low. Uh, it seemed like the mindset probably more so driven by the stressors and the weight of having responsibility has always been there. And that's what continues to drive me to always think, well, what is next? I think we just need to change the stigma of, that's what you're supposed to do, to actually having more empathy for those who are doing what they're supposed to do on a day to day basis. There's a lot of men that, deal with battles that they probably don't speak about to people or their person because they don't want it to turn into an argument or turn into drama. I saw a friend on Facebook that was saying that, they're happy go lucky, but they were diagnosed with something type of depression. And I'm like, it's probably a lot of people like that, man, but don't realize it. Therapy's a real thing. It shouldn't be looked at like a weakness. So you don't want to bring it up if somebody doesn't have the empathy to understand, or they make it about themselves, or you just don't think that they'll be able to relate to you because maybe they've never had to wear that hat or hold that mantle, right? I mean, everybody has their own role. So, I just felt with the recent passing of Father's Day, and even being jokingly about that, how it doesn't get looked at upon as high as Mother's Day. But with that, Juneteenth, and I believe June is Men's Mental Health Month. Um, those are three big things that all revolve around Black men in particular. So I just want to say that we should try to do our best to be kind to one another and understand that, as long as you're trying, then the empathy should be there, not just from one another as Black men, but also from others as well. So, one thing that has been bothering me recently is the recent coverage of the Diddy trial. So, of course, we know Diddy is on trial for, I believe it's a sex trafficking RICO. And, court deliberations have been going on for many, many weeks now. Um, One thing about the coverage that has been bothering me is that, like, all the highlights or the blurbs from the coverage has just been stuff to me that just doesn't really matter in relation to what he's on trial for. Now, granted, I understand the art of storytelling, painting the picture, getting thoughts, replies, context given by victims, witnesses, people who are around. And you really want to be able to give as clear a picture as possible when you're a prosecutor to the jury, because they're the ones who are going to make the ultimate decision. I don't think there's nothing wrong with the prosecution doing their job this way. They're the professionals, they would know what they're doing, right? Unless you're like Fulton County ones who fumble the thug stuff because they didn't have anything. But outside of not talking about the prosecution and what they're doing to paint the story and doing their job, what really annoys me, again, it's not them, it's the coverage. And then the coverage by the social media sites. I see some new stuff like from these sites like all the time, like all the fucking time. And it's not the coverage like in general, but it's just the bullshit that they're highlighting in the trial. Be shit like where the victim was like, oh, when we got together, he said, I'm Mike Bibby, him and the other person are Shaq and Kobe, and they're gonna run a pick and roll on my asshole. And just like other freak ass type shit. Like my problem with highlighting these coverages of these things is that, like, yeah, we know the internet is all about engagement farming and getting impressions and likes and shares and comments, because that's how you're going to make your money. But while highlighting these things in particular, we're highlighting things that only really come off and sound as just freak nigga activities, not really highlighting the crimes of what he's being accused of. Now, by doing this, I feel like we start to muddy the waters of the image to the public. And ultimately, people have short attention spans. So they're going to start to think, well, shit, like, what the hell are you on trial for? Like, being a freak ass nigga? Like, it sounds like he didn't commit a crime. It just sounds like he's just a freaky motherfucker. So, like, as much as the sites, like, have to cover this and highlight things that the victims are saying on the stand, you know, people are just going to continue to ask that question of, like, what does this have to do with what he's getting charged with? So far, I haven't heard anything that he's done wrong. Even if you have lots of baby oil and threesomes, that's not illegal. So I think it just starts to turn the tide for people. So my point about all this is, we have to always be considerate and come correct with reporting and understanding optics. Now, granted, like I just alluded to, these social sites, they probably don't give a fuck, because ultimately their job is to get engagement. And the most how you get the engagement is by shares and cover what's going on and whatever's going to be sort of captivating headlines that are in all black caps, so that you can double tap, like, check the comments, and argue with people and share as funny memes and whatever else. But, like, all this, of course, being the result of capitalism and needing money, and you get money from ad dollars. But, like, sometimes I just think, we got to look at things from a human perspective. It's just going to go back to my point, man. we're keeping the door cracked open for people to say, I ain't heard nothing this nigga did wrong. He probably ain't do shit. And ironic enough, as of the recording of this pod, I just read that the prosecutor is already dropping some charges compared to what they were originally trying to charge with. So this just lets me know that I'm not tripping on how I'm feeling. It sounds like that they starting to feel like certain shit they maybe want to charge for isn't going to stick the same, or it's just not going to hit as hard. Probably because it's just you're not doing your job right. So, I don't know. At the end of the day, we just talked about bigging up black men, so you never want to tear down a black man, and it always should be, innocent, before proven guilty for sure. But, when there's smoke, there's fire, and when certain things, it's some bullshit, something happened. Even if you don't know exactly what happened, something happened. We saw footage of one thing that happened for sure from the hotel camera. So, that's foul as it is. So there's nothing I can do to protect black men in that situation. But at the end of the day, when it's bullshit, and ultimately, sure, we want to get clicks on social sites and things like that, but we shouldn't want to jeopardize consequences being reaped by someone who probably really deserves it. And we're painting a narrative, maybe unintentionally, that he ain't really do shit for the public opinion. If you swaying people online, these same people online are starting to be jurors now. So they're probably going to start to think the same way. So we just have to have some type of reporting equity and being able just to understand better that sometimes it's not just about the money. It's about being a fucking decent human being and making sure that we're reporting with good authority. Thanks for listening to the FMFU podcast. Follow me on Facebook at FMFU Experience. I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at FMFU_experience. Also check me out on Twitch for some Warzone action at ReesePup007. Remember, people, life is a series of choices. Just make sure you make the right one. Peace.